Morning, everyone. Thank you very much for attending. I'm Kim Johal. I'm joined with Richard Lim from Retail Economics. I'm from Infobip. Infobip is a CPaaS, so a communications platform, and we enable business engagements all around the world. And it's our job to basically support businesses understanding how they basically engage their customers and understand what they need to do in that journey itself to optimize that communication strategy. So we research quite a lot of data. We process over 500 billion interactions in a year, and so we know a thing or two about actually different types of engagements, what's working well, what's not working so well. What we wanted to do, though, was actually, rather than get complacent and feel that actually we understand the voice of the customer, we basically brought in Richard and his team from Retail Economics to basically drill down into data sets, understand the voice of the actual customer themselves, and it was really interesting in what we found out. I'll hand over to Richard to give a little bit more detail.
Brilliant, thanks Kim. To hear, then you put your red, and then hopefully everyone can hear fine. There's a lot of background noise. Anyway, thanks for that. For those of you who aren't familiar with me and Richard, Retail Economics, economics consultancy, and we're focused on providing research to the retail community. So we're really excited.
One moment, some audio issues. I can try and gap fill, but I don't have the same exposure as Richard to give you the detail. Oh.
Hello? Yes, okay. I think this is the perils of being the first presentation of the day. So anyway, so back to it. So we're really excited to have partnered with Infobip to do this piece of research. And this is really focused around the customer journey. And expectations for consumers are higher than ever before. And I'm sure this is something that everyone's heard in this audience before and everyone can relate to as individual consumers. And I actually think, I believe it is absolutely the case, and actually expectations for consumers are only going to get higher. There's looking for a relationship to form with retail brands that is more kind of like digital, more personalized. And I also think that the relationships that they form with companies outside of retail are permeating into retail in terms of their expectations. So if you think about the seamless access we have to taxis, for example, through Uber, or the seamless access we have to music through Spotify, or the seamless access we have to intelligence now through ChatGPT, the level of expectations from consumers is just higher than ever before, and that is influencing the kind of expectations they have within the retail sector. And so that was kind of the inspiration behind this piece of work, where we wanted to really understand, almost like the problem with retail. Across the customer journey, what are those friction points that consumers face when they're dealing with retailers at different parts of the customer journey? And so we conducted a piece of research. It was 2,000 consumers, nationally representative across the UK, to really gain a much better understanding of expectations across different areas, different characteristics for consumers, and where they were actually feeling those pain points. And what we saw is these 4 characteristics emerge from the research. We had 12% that we called exacting consumers, and as that sounds, this is a group of consumers that have really high expectations, and I'm going to talk through all of these in a bit more detail. We had 29% that are busy shoppers, 44% the largest group that we called social shoppers, and then 15% that we called laid-back shoppers. The exacting shoppers, though, as you'd expect, have expectations that exceed all other groups. And so they are 12% of the group of consumers that we looked at. In terms of age, they were kind of around that millennial era, that kind of age, but they were really digital dependent. So you can see there, in terms of channel preference, if you ask them, what's your preference for shopping online? Do you shop almost entirely online, mostly online, sometimes in store? You kind of break it down, and actually their channel preference is really heavily leaning towards digital. And then if you look at the customer experience and break that down into the different components around returns, availability, communication, delivery options, and tracking, their expectations of what they expect for retailers exceeds the average for all other groups for all of those different aspects. So they want digital excellence. They don't want the kind of friction. But actually, if they find a retailer that can match their expectations, they are loyal. They want to stay with that retailer. They want to continue to build a relationship with that retailer. And actually, they form an engagement with that retailer that is lasting. We found 29% that we called the busy shopper. This is a group of consumers that are typically around kind of that middle-aged group. They've got busy lives. They have to delicately manage that work-life balance. But essentially, they really want that seamless journey, but they're a much more omni-channel shopper. So when you look at the channel preferences, a big bulk of it lies in mostly digital and mostly in store, but that essentially means that they're omni-channel shoppers. They like bouncing between the different channels depending on the shopper mission, depending on the category, depending on the price point, depending on the service that they want from retailers. But essentially, they still are demanding across all of the different areas of that CX, but just not as demanding as exacting shoppers. The next group was the biggest group, social shoppers, 44%. We found social shoppers. They're kind of evenly split across age, more or less. There are slightly more tendency to be over 65, but the traits are they like omni-channel. So again, a bit more digital leaning than a bit more physical leaning than the previous group, but they are omni-channel shoppers. And actually, when it comes to their expectations across those different CX areas, they're generally kind of around the average. And what that left is the laid-back shopper. And a laid-back shopper is, again, it's kind of evenly split across age. They're definitely more physical leaning. They still like that digital experience, but they like that tactile in-store experience. They value the human element of the customer journey. In terms of their level of demands, in terms of CX, actually they're pretty laid back. They're more forgiving of poorer customer service, but they still, of course, want to build that relationship, but just a bit more forgiving. What we found super interesting in this piece of research is that unlike many other pieces of research that we've done many over the years, what you usually see is quite a clear correlation by age and affluence of some kind. So if we've done a piece of research around social media, where you typically find that younger consumers are more leaning into that. If it's around sustainability, it might be more affluent consumers that are more interested in sustainability. But actually, when you come to looking at the level of tolerance that consumers have for poor experiences or friction within the customer journey, there isn't that kind of relationship that you get through age and affluence. So actually, if you look at the Gen Z group on the far left, then there's almost an equal 16% are exacting shoppers, but actually 21% are laid-back shoppers. And actually, if you look at in terms of affluence, then there's about 15% of the lowest affluence group that are exacting shoppers, but actually that's more than the middle income group. So actually, when it comes to levels of expectations and the level of tolerance for friction within the customer journey, it goes beyond age and affluence. And actually, the clearest proxy, the clearest marker that we have when it comes to that level of tolerance is whether or not they are digital shoppers. And so the most digital shoppers are the exacting shoppers. They shop online more frequently, they have higher transaction values, but if retailers get it right, then they can turn that into or they can monetize that as a lifetime value for those consumers. But you can see there that the exacting shopper is more digital. They spend 25% more than the average for non-food purchases online across the population, and actually getting the servicing level right for these exacting shoppers is worth about £15 billion in terms of sales across the industry. And you can see there in terms of penetration rate, 2/3 of their spending is actually online. And then when you look at what the kind of the annoyances, what do these shoppers get annoyed at? Then you can see returns processes is a key area, availability issues, and poor communication are some of the three critical areas that really damage the relationship between consumers and businesses.
Thank you very much, Richard. Just to continue the conversation and moving into a little bit more detail about how does that data correlate into actual engagement, I'll go through a couple of slides just to give you a little bit more of a picture overall. So Infobip, for those who are not familiar with ourselves, we're a global communications platform. We enable businesses to pretty much engage with their customers wherever they want to, over whatever sort of means they need to. We're global, so meaning actually we can touch anywhere in the world, so wherever your customers are and whatever your platform is, we can support that. And we have 70 offices around the world to support that. In terms of availability, I mentioned we're a communications platform, so we enable pretty much any channel you need to engage with, and pretty much offer it through a single platform and a single API and instance in itself. But we understand the importance of actually connecting two platforms, because actually on its own, it's not as powerful, but having the data ingest coming from different systems, whether that be e-commerce platforms, CRMs, etc., you can really sort of hyper-personalize your engagements. So on Richard's research, what was really interesting is actually some of these stats here, and one of the sort of standout things is we expect to see email being at the top. It's the simplest and most commonly used sort of engagement channel in customer sort of communication, and that from engagement coming from the business as well as from the consumer. Followed by that is to SMS. So we're all familiar with SMS. Generally it's proactive and it's business driven. You don't generally see users driving into engagements with a business through SMS, more a notification type system. Subsequently phone calls is also sort of equal. You can see actually a consumer wants to reach out to your business, and we know there's a huge overhead with actual people calling into a contact center, when simple engagement strategies can actually bypass and mitigate some of these types of inquiries. What's really interesting is the actual drive of online. You know, there's always been contention about online as to how do you engage with your customers by having like online chat, in-app chat, etc. And bots have always been around for some time, but some bots have made some bad decisions. So actually having human and automated solutions is the best fit, and technology is advanced enough now to actually drive and compel your business to move forward with that engagement strategy. We're seeing the rise of channels such as WhatsApp and RCS. Actually, Apple's just upgraded their iOS to iOS 18, which is actually going to release SMS 2.0, which is called Rich Communication Services. So it will mean you can actually engage with Android users across platform. So this is a real big step in terms of actually enriching your strategy and actually going more conversational with your engagement piece overall. So Richard touched on some of the, I guess, personas that we've got, right? We're all used to looking at, I guess, a segment of people and assuming actually the fit is the same, but actually some of the challenges that they have are very different. So looking at your data set, you need to really sort of drill down and personalize that in a way actually that suits the individual, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. And some of the sort of the key sort of challenges that were highlighted were clear communication. You know, the busy and the social shoppers were quite a prominent proportion of that research. So actually making sure you've got clear communications, easy ways to navigate websites, easy ways to contact retailers when there are problems. You know, the after service, it's not all about the point of sale, it's about how you service the customer ongoing to basically retain that customer and build the ongoing, basically, purchase history itself. But the exacting shoppers were also looking for more personalized engagement. They're looking for consistent messages across all their communication sort of strategies themselves. So they want to be notified, they want to be told, right, your order has been confirmed, your order is out for dispatch. Was the item received? Was there any damage? They want that personal touch. So this is where actually this goes into a little bit more detail. So you can't do this from actually the point they visit your website. You need to monitor your data and understand actually what is that customer profile, and then add that additional layer of actual drill down from there. So we're all used to sort of the evolution of retail. You know, we know that actually it started out in bricks and mortars. We used to visit stores, and we had a personal service with a retail system within the store itself. It's moved on. You know, we've moved to sort of web platforms. So we've gone omni-channel with physical and digital world combined, and now the world's moved on. AI's come out, and everyone's like, right, okay, AI. Where do I start? What do I do? Actually, it's about digitalizing your customer engagement, bringing into the journey at the right points an option for customers to engage with you. And when we talk about sort of chatbots, we're not saying everything should be automated using, you know, large language models. There is options for you to basically bring in, for instance, NLP engines, where actually you drive the engagement to the strategy and communication ways that you want it to run. If we look at the sort of demographics sort of side of things in a bit more detail, Gen Z makes up 30% of the actual, I guess, shopper population in itself around the world. That's going to come down to sort of 27 in 2025. Why? Because Gen A is becoming of age. That's our next generation of shopper in themselves, and you know, they're the generation that were born with the tablet in the hand. They're the ones that are using sort of more digital means of engagement and communication. So we've got to look at our strategies of engagement and understand, how do we sort of cater for this audience? How do we evolve our service offering and personalize based on what that user's experience is? And this is how it will happen. You know, we did a report of that data set I mentioned of, like, you know, we do sort of 500 billion interactions, and of that, we analyzed the data, and we saw a 91% increase in, I guess, conversational messaging. So rather than it being a broadcast type engagement, actually users are actually conversing back with the brand to basically get the service level that they're looking for. 137 increase in mobile app messaging. You know, apps have been around for a while, but actually, are they being utilized in the right way? We're all, you know, users of apps, and you know, do we leave their notifications on? Do we switch them off? You know, is it just the important apps that we leave enabled? So having the failover mechanisms to bring them back into your app is really sort of crucial in that strategy as well. And then you've got increase in social messaging and in chat apps. So Richard mentioned around the social shopper being one of the prominent buyers in our sort of offering itself. So you really got to understand how you basically connect your social feeds to basically your one-to-one customer engagement. So hitting a mass audience to bringing it to a one-to-one dialogue. And that's where things become a lot more conversational and engaging. I like this slide. It just comes in really well. I'll let it load first. So when we look at the customer journey, we've got awareness, consideration, purchase, service, and loyalty. And then you've got digital touch points and you've got physical touch points. And in that journey in itself, actually there's loads of different touch points where you're actually collecting data. So you've really got to build out that sort of holistic view of your customer and look at how you basically collect that information and use that information to engage your customers. But what's really interesting is when we get to purchase and service and loyalty, the engagements really increase in a digital area, and we spoke about conversational. Conversation doesn't necessarily have to be from the start to the end when someone basically engages with your brand, or you try to engage your customer in a two-way dialogue. It can be at the points where actually they're an expect service because they've received their parcel, they've basically opened it and found it's damaged, so they want to contact your business. So this is where it gets conversational, and that can be through agent-driven engagement, or it can be automated. It's entirely up to you what fits best, but actually that's the point where you really need to look at how you hyper-personalize that. And then finally, if you get your cameras out, you can download the report from Retail Economics. This is a quick way to get that, so if you do snap away, I'll move out the way because I don't want to, you know.
Brilliant. And actually, if anyone wants a copy of the slides, then please do let me know. You can contact me on LinkedIn, Richard Lim, CEO of Retail Economics, and we're more than happy to share the slides with you as well. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.